Hi there, my name's Marissa and I'm going to be talking about one of the lessons that you can find in my EDTPA. The lesson that I will be doing is lesson 1. Hold up, let's stop for a second and talk about my central focus. My central focus is to have students identify characteristics of main characters, the problem and solutions of a book, and the sequencing of events in a book. My central focus aligns with the Common Core standard of English RL 1.3, which is to describe characters, settings, and major events in a story using key details. All 3 of my lessons will revolve around Julius, the Baby of the World, which was written by Kevin Hanks. But for the first lesson, I will be focusing on how students can identify characteristics of characters in a book. So how would I start this lesson? I would start this lesson by engaging students first in a little icebreaker activity. The activity I have chosen to use at the beginning of this lesson will help create a community of learners by helping students get to know each other a little more, and it will help students to be more comfortable around each other. You're probably wondering what this activity is that I'm talking about. Well, it's considered an icebreaker. So students will circle up, and then the students will say their name, they will introduce themselves, and then they will describe themselves by using only one word. So an example would be, "Hi, my name is Miss King, and I am creative." You can also tell your students that, just like people, characters have physical descriptors too. So I can say, "I wear glasses." Well, that's great and all, but now you have a whole bunch of words that students gave you. What are you supposed to do with that information? Well, what I would do is I would write down all those answers on the board, and then I would have students explain themselves. I'd ask a couple students why they think of themselves as creative or why they wear glasses. This question will allow students to think about proof. So I can point to myself saying, "I wear glasses, you can see them on my face," or "I am creative because I can draw and I like to create new things." This may also be a time where you can explain to students how characters can be different, and that's the whole point of characters. It's just like us, we're all different, and so we have to find words that we think describe ourselves. After the activity, it'll be a little difficult to get the students to go back into their seats, so that's why I kind of say to do this activity in a circle during morning meeting and just write down their answer so that you can use it for later. After the transition, or whenever your reading class starts, you will then want to have students read the book. I don't mean to have the students actually read the book, I just mean to have the students listen to the book, because first graders can have varying abilities of reading and letter knowledge, so you need to be aware that there's students who are at varying levels that you have to accommodate. So one way I did that is by reading the book out loud, or by putting a video on YouTube and doing that. While reading the book, I would stop at certain parts and I will ask the students how they think a character is being described by either looking at the picture or looking at a certain word, and I called these words vocabulary words. I called the descriptors vocabulary words mainly because the story has a lot of vocabulary that students may not know. So to address this, I would have students use context clues such as words in a sentence or pictures that can be found in the book. So I would go through that with them when reading a page. After the students have listened to the book, I will go over a worksheet with the students. This worksheet is a sort the character. The second worksheet is the actual sheet that they will be turning in. This worksheet has 2 columns in it. One column has Lily's name and the other column has Julius's name. So there will be 6 characteristics from the first sheet, and the students have to cut them out and then paste them onto the sheet with the names on it under the characters who they Don't worry, I won't have students do this on their own. I would definitely help the students. First off, by helping them read just the characteristics. Some of the characteristics are words they haven't seen before, so going over what they look like and where we may find them in the book is a good idea. There's also a little trick in there. There's one descriptor that can be used for both, and that is wet pink nose. So a way a teacher could go around this is by talking about a Venn diagram, not going into specifics, but just saying how there are some similarities that people can have that characters can also have. So when you look in a book, you may have to be told what those characteristics are rather than being seen what they are. After we go over the vocabulary or the descriptors, each student will cut out their first activity sheet. One way to help with transitions is to have students, after they've finished cutting out their worksheet and are just waiting, you can have them try and sort each characteristic to the person they think they're describing. This is a good way to informally assess where your students are at or where their vocabulary is at. As they're doing that, you can walk around the room and see what every student has done, what characteristics they think, and if needed, you can ask them why they think a characteristic describes this one character instead of the other, and it can be either a right or a wrong answer. As we continue on to the lesson, I would have students first pick out the characteristic they want me to model. So we can do this by voting, or they can just have me pick it, but it's more fun to vote. Next, I'm going to think back in the book and think about where I've heard this word. While students are thinking back, you'll have to have students think about where they can find this in the book. So will they find it in the beginning, in the middle, or in the end of the book? Once you or the students find the page where the word is used, which there may be multiple pages that the word is used, try to figure out who the word is describing by reading the passage again out loud to them and have the students think about which character is being talked about. By having students go back in the text, they can understand that sometimes they may have to prove their answer, or they may have to say why they thought of this answer a certain. I will not be assessing on students being able to give a reason or evidence as to why they will choose an answer, but it's good to prepare them for the future that they will be doing. So it's good to get them used to doing this. By having students also refer back to the text, it helps them learn how to use a good strategy for rereading books and looking for certain words that may describe a character. Once I've gone over how to model, how to find one answer, I will then have the students help me find an answer. So I will have the students then choose another word, and then we will find it in the text. They will help me find it in the text by where they think it is, the beginning, the middle, or the end. After we find it in the text, we will go back and we will read the page over. And then I will ask students what they think this descriptor is describing. Who do they think it's describing? Just based on the text. And if needed, you can have the students also refer to who is on the page. We then have proven that we found who that descriptor is describing because we found it in the book. I will then use guided teaching to help students think through the process of finding characteristics in a book. Meaning I'll do this 2 or 3 more times, and then there will be 2 that the students should be able to do on their own, but I'm always more than willing to help, and we will end up going over after they get time to do it. After the students have matched the 2 remaining characteristics, we will then go over it as a class. I will have the students direct me as to how I should think about and find these words. After we talked about it as a class, we have finished the worksheet. So always have the students give themselves a pat on the back. Also, a good way to end this lesson as a whole is to have students think about who the main character of the book is. You can have students think about who the main character of the book is because the name of the title is Julius, the baby of the world. But the book talks about Lily a lot, and she's the one doing all of the actions. So this is a good way to have students think deeper into characters and their roles in a text. After the students figure out who the main character is or who they think it is, they will figure out what the problem and solution are, which are in lesson 2.